This is the StartupsDilse podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Do us a favor, subscribe on YouTube or LinkedIn, and be sure to give us your feedback. Hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of StartupsDilse. This is Anthony Prakash, your host, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Ralph Gootee from TigerEye. I've known Ralph for a couple of years. I've had an opportunity to listen to Ralph recently at an event, and since then, I've been trying to get Ralph on our podcast, so I'm super happy that Ralph has taken the time to talk to us about his journey. More importantly, what he's up to these days. He's a co-founder of a company called TigerEye, and he will talk to us about TigerEye and many more things along his superb entrepreneurial journey he's been on. So first of all, Ralph, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Anthony. Nice to be here.
Awesome. So just for the audience, Ralph, why don't you kick us off with a little bit about yourself, things that they should know at a high level. We'll obviously go through everything that you've been on all the learnings in your journey. So over to you, Ralph.
Thank you. My name is Ralph Gootee. I'm the CTO and co-founder of TigerEye. This is my second company. My first company was named Plangrid. It sold to Autodesk about 5-6 years ago. So this has been a really fun journey for me. I didn't expect to be an entrepreneur or certainly to be a second-time founder. I started my career in research, actually, at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, where I was a researcher, and also I did a lot of very low-level grunt tasks, like set up source control systems on Solaris Unix machines. It was a really fun job. I really enjoyed it. I eventually got to do some math optimization. After that, I was working in suburban Maryland. That's where Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory is based. My friend invited me out to interview at Sony. This was at the time Sony Ericsson was around, before the iPhone. And so Sony Ericsson used to make the best phones right before the iPhone. And I interviewed out at Sony Ericsson. I ended up loving California. I could go rock climbing. I could eat delicious vegan burritos. The work was interesting to me. It was, I worked on Android 1.0 with Sony and Google as a collaboration. So I joined Sony. I worked there for about a year and a half. It was when they launched the iPhone. So my background also, I was working at a cell phone company while the iPhone was being launched. I actually got to watch a company respond to the iPhone's launch, which was exciting and really taught me a lot when building my own company as well, how to build a product team. I did after working for Sony for a bit, I had a really great opportunity to work at Pixar, where I worked on Cars 2, Toy Story 3, and Brave. I'm credited on Cars 2. I'm really proud of it's my children's favorite movie, which is kind of crazy considering Cars 2 is not my personal favorite Pixar movie, but it is all three of my children's favorite movie right now. So very proud to have done that in the past. I had a great job there. I had a great boss. I had a great team. It was a really good experience for me. And the only reason I left Pixar was to start playing with at the time my partner, now my wife, and three of my best friends. Actually, we all started a construction software company called Plangrid. Built it from us 5 co-founders to about 400, 500 people at the time of the acquisition by Autodesk. Still, great journey. A lot of people that joined us during that journey are still working at Autodesk. It was really quite an experience going from a kind of $0 to $100 million company. And a lot of those experiences were kind of what led me into TigerEye. So that's just a little short thing on my background.
That is such a fascinating background, Ralph. I'm honored that you're also the first guest from Hollywood, I should say, given your work in Pixar and Cars and elsewhere. So that's another feather in the podcast. So thank you for that. So one of the things that I was really curious to learn about you, just as a person and your fascination for math in general is, were you, as a kid, were you inspired by somebody and drawn towards math, or how did that happen?
I was really lucky on my career in math. I was actually drawn towards computers as a kid. So I was talking to my dad and mentioned I learned how to program at about 12, and my father corrected me. I was actually 9. That sounds stupid. I barely believe it. I think he's just being proud, but I taught myself QBasic off of the DOS QBasic because the help manual was like a full functional pro. I mean, you could like literally learn to program from just the help guide. And I really loved it. There was example code. And so the example code really gave me a lot, like, I just was a kid living in the country with QBasic and a help file. And I really loved it. I taught myself Visual Basic. One of my friends' parents had that, gave it to me, and that really just gave me something to do. Before the internet even existed, I was just having fun designing Windows 3.1 interfaces. But the reason I got into math was when I was in the computer science program. I was very lucky to have a teacher that really cared about me, and I was talking to them about computer science and like the different careers. And this is just advice I got. I liked it. Was the advice that he gave me was that, computer science was it was a tool, and that you wanted to do something with that tool. And it was really helpful to have some domain experience with which to apply the tool. And he told me that math was a good area there because, when you talk about code or programming, yeah, everyone knows that, right? Like I can use Excel, right? Like I know how to program. But when you say like Chinese remainder theorem, everyone's eyes like glaze over. And so it was good advice for me back then. It got me, I was also lucky to have another teacher that when I wasn't very good at math. Let me put it short. I was not good at math until I got into kind of college and upper level math. And it wasn't until I learned how to tie together math concepts with programming that it really started to come together. For example, I learned MATLAB. And so like MATLAB was like my bridge between mathematics and coding. And I really ended up loving high level theoretical math. So I was not a math kid very much. I wasn't very good at math in high school. I wasn't very academically skilled at it. But by the time I got to upper level mathematics, I really loved it. It's particularly abstract algebra and kind of like fundamental theories of prime numbers and cryptography. It's just so much fun for me. But you don't get to learn that stuff until later. I failed math just like everyone else when I was younger.
I'm actually the opposite, I must say. I was really good in math in school, and then something happened when I went to college, and everything went in disarray, right? So, I actually did mechanical engineering, so I did nothing related to computers until I got a job, which was in the computer science industry. So life happens, as they say. Right. So
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So you told about math. I mean, how did the whole design aspect come in? Was that more at Pixar and Sony or somewhere else?
I guess going back to that, like teaching myself Visual Basic, I actually like just kind of, I'm an amateur artist. I'm not like very good, but I work at it. It's very fun for me. And the aspects, when I was at Pixar, I was very lucky to be able to sit in art classes. Like everyone can join art classes when I worked at Pixar.
Yeah.
So I got to take art classes by real artists. So I know like I'm not like them. But I really enjoy it. And the interface, like user experiences, I'm so into user experience. I think it's because it's like a personal passion of mine, being able to try to drive something towards simplicity and usefulness, kind of work through the edges. It's really fun for me. So on the design aspect, for plangrid, did pretty much all the initial user experience and design. I was lucky to have some co-founders that were really good editors and did do some parts of it too. But I was very lucky to have been able to build the design team and build the product team and been able to design a lot of the core products. I'm lucky at TigerEye to have hired an amazing designer to work with. So for me personally, I like to hire people better than me. And thankfully, I've got a designer that's much better than me that I work with now. But I just love his designs. It's fun for me.
Yeah, that is always a smart approach to get somebody smarter than you on the team, right? So let's double click on plangrid, right, before we get into TigerEye itself, because I think your foundation for TigerEye came from your years of experience working on plangrid, all the issues that you had to deal with planning and number crunching and things like that. So for the audience, Ralph, I mean, can you just take us through how plangrid came about? How did you become a co-founder with your now partner in life? And how is that journey as a whole for you?
Plangrid. What a special journey that was, really. The more years that go by, the more you can kind of reflect upon really a special experience. We were very lucky. Like that's the thing to say. We were lucky. We worked hard. We're in the right place, the right time. That just doesn't happen very often. There's a big component of luck here. iPad 1 had just been launched, brand new. I had deep graphics experience from Pixar, particularly around EPS and PDF files. I'm like a world expert in PDF files. It's a weird thing. Like no one even wants to admit being an expert in PDF files, but here I am. I've researched PDF files. And I meet a woman at a punk venue, watching a really great show, and we hit it off, and I want to impress her. And she's like, I've got this, my friend, we're doing a startup, blueprints on an iPad. And I said, hey, I can put blueprints on an iPad for you. And it turns out it was actually quite hard at the time. The iPad 1 was very limited in its graphics abilities, and blueprints are huge. They're physically large, 42 by 30 inches, right? So when you do the measurements for DPI, right, you want about 200 dots per inch, try to get a good scan going. It's just a lot of memory and a lot of space these things take up, which was my specialty, was dealing with that. So I put it wasn't like anything too advanced I applied, but just kind of general off the shelf, good graphics algorithms, and was able to produce a blueprint renderer that's still at the heart of Autodesk solution, as far as I can tell. Mm-hmm. And it was, light years ahead of the competition. For instance, on the iPad 1, Plang's the only thing that could view blueprints for about 2 to 3 years. That we had only viewer, right? Acrobat would crash, the built-in preview would crash out of memory. Eventually, hardware got better, software got better, 5 years in, we had other features that kind of kept us ahead. But the core of the product was a blueprint viewer and the idea of version control and blueprints, because construction blueprints change really frequently. So we brought in a few version control concepts from, computer science, and we leafed that together with like issue tracking and then having issues on the different versions and then deploying that to the field really fast, having cross-platform annotations. It was a very user-friendly, a very loved product. We had a very high NPS score, 4.9 stars, 2,000 reviews on the App Store, a really passionate user base in construction. In the field, this was a product that was meant for people, there's all kinds of ways to say it. People that wore boots, people that had to shower at night, after a long day's worth of work, right? There's all kinds of ways to say it, but people in the field is the most simple way to say it. Like we tried to build software for folks that wore hard hats to the job every day, and it was really, honestly, an honor and a privilege to be able to serve the work those folks working that hard. Like, it was inspiring, as I look back to it, and I'm really proud of what we built as a team. The fun note is we also were able to build a really strong company culture, at plangrid. We were well known and to have a very strong team. There's probably about 10 successful startups that were all from alumni at plangrid. Some of them, they're advertising on 101 when you drive into San Francisco. People that have met at plangrid, started a company with those folks, and I think are going to be more successful than plangrid was long term, which is I think that's probably what I'm most proud of more than anything else for the plangrid journey, is that we were able to build a place where people could connect, build even more successful things in the future. And it was really, as I said a few times, a special place. Based out of 17th and Mission, that was where our office was, nice. Right above Thrift Town. Really good burritos in the area. We had great places to eat, great bars, great neighborhood to be in. And I think the industry's changed quite a bit from what it was back when we started. I still have friends in the industry. They're good friends of mine. And, I'm glad we I think, got to help move the industry forward into the digitization era. It's a different era now. That was like kind of the mobile digitization era. Now we're in obviously the AI era. There's different challenges in construction than there were when we were doing plangrid. But for its time, it was, something I'm really proud of, and something that thankfully made a lot of people very successful.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. And, like you said, being in the right place at the right time, that was very important with the iPad. And I was also connecting in my head about, how important design is, right? Because in those early days of using technology like on a flat screen, and people who are not really technology savvy, right? Like the construction workers, maybe in today's world, everybody is. But in those days, for you to, first of all, get that adoption, and then from a design perspective, make it intuitive enough to say, okay, if they say, nope, I don't want to use this, I want to use something else, you got to cater to that audience. So I see how it all comes together for you. So super cool, Ralph. So let's shift gears a little bit. So with your current company, so maybe not there yet. So with plangrid, you sold that to Autodesk, and you were there for the transition for a little bit with Autodesk. And were you thinking about TigerEye right back then, or when did you start kind of thinking of, oh, what should we do next?
I would say that you're always kind of thinking about the next thing, or at least a few of the next things as an entrepreneur. Certainly wasn't working on TigerEye at that point, right? Of course not. But, kind of thinking about it, what are the problems that we have at Autodesk, right? What are the problems with integration, right? These were all inspirations that kind of landed us where we landed. So I think probably the best thing to say is I'd always had a challenge at plangrid around data. When we built the company, this was when Looker was first released, Redshift was first there. Like there was the concept of insights. Like this was very new. Like Mixpanel was like brand new still. Amplitude was still one of my friends' companies who's now, power to them. They're so successful right now. I'm so proud of them. They're kicking ass. Like these products were still so new. It wasn't like that then. And so you had to build a team to do any type of data insights, right? Like a full team. And we built this amazing team, like PhDs, great leadership, great individuals. And they started trying to do stuff with our data, right? Like, where's the hot leads? How are the customers connected? Mm-hmm. What's our ARR? Let's share the data and all this shit. So I think pretty common stuff. Every company kind of went through the same type of journey with, ETL and kind of where we landed. And that team was 10 people. It was expensive. And they didn't really like their work. And, truly, it could have been management. I could have maybe tried to be a better boss, but eventually it's they're an analyst, right? It's like a ticket crunching machine, right? Like, what's my segmentation breakdown and my growth, right? And then someone with a PhD would try to answer that with SQL and return the results. It wasn't a very satisfying job for them. And they eventually left, and they're leading the data science teams at Brex and very successful folks doing great things with their career. But when they left, they kind of left a bunch of dashboards laying around, not quite assembled fully, And so they're all on to their next jobs, right? They weren't worried about their old dashboards. And I started to notice when I was a board member at different companies that the same kind of thing would pop up. It's just a bunch of dashboards laying around, and they weren't really fused together well. There was a lot of work to put them together too. So this was something we kind of started to put together at both Autodesk and at plangrid. Was during the transition, there's two Salesforce environments. People were trying to sell to the same companies, right? It was kind of hard to coordinate some basic things around back office, in particular, CRM, ERP, marketing type stuff. Knowing what campaigns were successful was mysterious somehow. It was still very difficult, and this for most companies. So these were some of the challenges we saw during the transition that kind of helped inspire us for what's next.
Yeah, you're so spot on. For those of you who don't know, I come from 20 years of go-to-market, and when I saw TigerEye, you're putting together something like this, and with all the features that you've listed, it was, I look forward to what you guys were building, because you're so right. I used to be an account manager, a client partner for some of the largest accounts out there. The week that I would dread is the week I did forecasting, right? Because it is 50% math, and 50% gut feel, right? And you're so worried about the gut feel that you're putting out there saying, oh my God, is my forecast going to be right? And then the same thing, when you're running a product, I've seen saying, okay, you spent $100,000 on this campaign. What is the real impact of this $100,000 from the campaign? People will say, okay, we got these 10 leads. And it stops there, right? Nobody is quantifying it beyond the 10 leads and saying, okay, how are we taking this forward? What dollars does it result in? Nothing like that. So I totally appreciate what you're doing. And in a way, correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph, you're actually trying to build a new category with TigerEye, right? You would not classify this as a CRM or, another go-to-market tool which captures leads and things like that. Where do you see TigerEye fitting into that whole realm of things?
That's a great question. Right now, it was actually kind of surprising that business intelligence was where we landed. I don't even know if it's I gotta check. Can I say we're business intelligence out loud? In particularly the go-to-market space. Mm-hmm. What the learning was as we started the company and from our last one was that democratized data was great for a certain generation, right? But then it had some type of like inverse effect where it got so democratized. It's like just a bunch of stuff around, and it was hard to get the answers of like what's really happening. And so you end up with these companies that are like, basically just asking the question, like, where are we at over and over again out into like basically nothingness. You know what I mean? Like they just keep asking that same question, keep getting the same results back. And so what we tried to do is bring together both the business intelligence space with obviously artificial intelligence, comboed artificial intelligence, both the current generation of artificial intelligence, now it's generative AI is what most people mean when they say AI, as well as predictive artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is what people would have meant, a few years ago when people said AI. So we bring all those things together into a very like tailor-made go-to-market ERP business intelligence solution. The advantage of this is it like from out of the box, you get a lot more functionality. You don't really have to hire a team of people to try to customize it. Like these things end up being a pattern at every company we work with. We've noticed that there's just a very strong pattern of what kind of graphs people are looking for, the connections they need to make between their, the whole quote to cash kind of process, or even before that, what about like just touch to cash, right? Like we're trying to work on basically, that's what most people use business intelligence for in the go-to-market space. We're basically trying to get people the information they need a lot faster so they can make better strategic decisions. AI unlocks a lot of superpowers that we didn't have before. Like certainly it's, we feel like we're far ahead of the competition right now. I mean, that's just because the competition is still trying to release products and we have something we can demo. We're always keeping an eye because there's a lot of marketing message out there on what business, what AI is doing in the business world. But we haven't seen much when it comes to real agent technology. And that's what the core of our product is an agent analyst that can answer basic questions around your data and then also answer more complicated questions about growth of next year. What happens if I add 3 sales reps to Maryland? You know what I mean? These are very challenging things to model and do scenario analysis on. That's what our product's meant for, not the basic stuff, but the more complicated stuff. Of course, we have to answer the basic stuff really easily to answer the complicated stuff. So we do that too.
Got it. And I also noticed with the whole AI analyst, I mean, you're kind of giving the freedom of choice to pick which LLM your customers want to use. So you're kind of marrying, let's say, TigerEye's own proprietary technology that you've developed with all your knowledge on this data, with the BI tools and all of that, bringing in whichever the customer is comfortable with and kind of bringing the best of both worlds, so to speak, right? I mean, is that a right way to put it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of our lessons from plangrid as well was the needs of enterprise customers. TigerEye is an enterprise product built for enterprise companies, enterprise and mid-market companies that are growing very fast. And because of this, they might have already chosen the model they want to work with, or maybe partnered with OpenAI or Anthropic already, or Google, and we want to be able to take advantage of working with the data teams that, the work they've already done and be able to integrate with whatever solutions the customer's already chosen that fits them. That being said, a lot of our current customers just, you use the default setting, if you will, right? They don't really need much customization. I think most people's journeys around AI in business is still very new, actually. It's like happening right now as we speak.
Got it. And for the sake of our friends from the Flutter community, or those of whom have not listened to your story from Flutter Silicon Valley, as you were preparing to build a brand new company, a brand new technology, right? I mean, how did you land on Flutter?
My gosh, man, Flutter, it's good. I get like freedom to talk about how much I love Flutter, and it's okay. People want to hear it, right? Because normally this would stop a conversation with like a normal person that doesn't want to talk about like Flutter. So this was like almost as we were trying to like learn about, what the challenges of businesses were during integration. I also knew about a core tech problem that I personally experienced, which was cross-platform development. It was really a nightmare at plangrid. Really, I mean, gosh, the wasted time developing the same feature on iOS, on Android, on web, on Windows native. And then also we had a very robust backend that could also export data, would often need parity issues. We had like a whole project manager just managing the coordination of a simple feature development between all the platforms. We had this matrix of feature parity across them all. And then every team started developing its own culture. Like the iOS culture is like, oh, we're so much better than the Android developers and yada, yada. It's really just a total waste of time. Like, I couldn't believe the effort that was just thrown away. And I didn't think personally that the native interface was giving me that much. You know what I mean? Like, sure, it's like kind of nicer, and I like iOS, I like Android apps, I like Android, but Spotify is pretty good looking, right? It's like Spotify on every platform, right? Even Apple does development on Android now. Apple Music is like also on Android. It looks great in its own weird little Apple UX. So I kind of felt like, even ChatGPT has its own kind of UX. It's not really iOS-y when you're using it. It's its own little ChatGPT world. And so I felt like that would be the approach I wanted to do, but I didn't know the tech stack to use. So I tried two major approaches. I tried web and, React Native and all that. And I really hated it for like a million reasons that I don't know if anyone wants to hear about, but it wasn't fast enough. I don't like the programming paradigms. I don't think web is meant to build apps. I think web technologies were meant for documents, and they're great at documents. They weren't meant for like an enterprise app. I don't want to write, and like everything comes back to the DOM. Like I learned web very early. I'm a good web developer. And so like all the technologies still have DOM leaking through it. Even, WebAssembly is really cool. I love the tech, but most of the UI, you're still going to end up writing in the DOM, right? You're just going to end up calling, unless you re-implement it all in WebAssembly, which then sparked my interest in like, what do video games do?
Yeah.
Video games already do this, right? They already share code. So I found some video game toolkits. One, immediate GUI was what I was really interested in. I wrote a CRM, a very simple CRM, in immediate GUI in C, and immediate GUI with direct to OpenGL. And it was like pretty hard. And I worked with the designer. I was like, hey man, can you make this look like a business app? Right? Like take immediate GUI and like build me like widgets with it. And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't, I tried my best. This is as good as I get. And while this was all happening, one of my old friends from Sony posted a paper, and it was a white paper on how they were developing their new, Sony worked with one of the automobile manufacturers in Japan to develop a new interface for their cars. And so it was a friend of mine, really good, talented, low-level engineer. So I just was reading the paper, and it was like, okay, they're using this technology, Flutter, and it's so low level that you can strip out all the widgets, and it writes directly to the frame, can work right with the frame buffer, so you can like get really good performance and graphics effects and shaders and stuff. And it's totally cross-platform. And then I was like, whoa, that's really close to what I want. And I started looking at how the widget tree works and, the unidirectional data flow, the state structures. And like, for me personally, as somebody that's been writing UI since Visual Studios 1.0, I've done Qt, I've done Mac, iOS, Android, Swift, Objective-C, Mac. I've done so many toolkits. It's nauseating. And this is, to me, the best. This is like the best I've ever seen on developing front-end systems. And it's proven itself out. We've built a lot of products in Flutter. I think probably, I'd say we're probably built, I don't know who else has built what, but I would say, without anyone saying it, I'd say we built probably one of the more complicated, if not the most complicated Flutter app out there. Because we've dealt with every challenge Flutter's pretty much had. And it's been awesome, man. I've really loved it. So that's what I'd say about Flutter. It's like I always want there to be a lot of development on Flutter in the future. So I've got my wish list. But even when I first came across Flutter like a year or two ago, it was already so close to being perfect. And it's still something I love, and a technology we're really close to.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I would attest to everything that you said. I mean, yes, I mean, there isn't, I mean, it's not going to check all the boxes for everybody, but I think it checks most of the boxes that you need, especially for a use case like yours. And I think, I mean, your implementation of Flutter is one of the more complicated implementations from at least what I saw. So I think everybody should take a look at what you guys have done with TigerEye, which is pretty cool. So,
thank you, Anthony. I have one other throw out there, just to remember. We also do open source work. Open source is really important to us as a company. But we want to make sure that we support what we launch. So we're taking it slow. Our first open source launch was DuckDB.Dart API. Dart's the lower level language that Flutter's built upon. Very well, as you all know. I mean, it's your audience. They're in the know. And DuckDB is DuckDB bindings, really high quality ones that work directly with Dart at a low level. And the advantage, DuckDB is like a super SQLite. It does everything SQLite can do, but it is much more, it's much more built for analytics, can handle, millions of data rows and doing kind of more complicated, calculations on them, which, TigerEye does a lot of that. So I just want to throw that out there too, is we also have some open source start tools.
Perfect. I'll be sure to tell the audience about that when we post this. So switching gears a little bit, Ralph, I know you did not set out to be an entrepreneur, but here you are, 2 companies later. I see you're also supporting a bunch of folks in Y Combinator, or you were, right? I mean, so what are the top things that, I mean, you think, people are doing? I mean, nowadays, there's obviously 10x more startups than what it was even 10 years ago, right? I mean, so many coming through the funnel, so many successful. But I mean, in your experience in Y Combinator, I mean, what are the things that, just really stood out to you that you take away as learnings? Any inputs for founders, Ralph, from your perspective?
Sure. Thank you for that. I was a visiting partner at Y Combinator for almost a year. I was very proud of that experience. It was a great experience for me. We still work really closely with them, and we're very proud to have Gary on our board, who also heads up Y Combinator. So, and I'm not an active investor right now, but I was an active angel investor, and my partner and I have given a few talks to the recent YC classes. So I'll try to summarize a little bit of what I see. In general, for people that want to apply to YC, there's some good advice I can give you. It's very straightforward. You should generally apply with a co-founder. Companies are best done in partnerships. It's good to know your partner that you're doing a company with for longer than a little while. The way you've met the person, how long you've known them is really important. It's a big difference from somebody that was a roommate in college with their co-founder and, built things with them for years and good friends versus somebody that met recently. It really makes a big difference when you're interviewing them. So try to, if you're going to find a co-founder, try to find someone you know and love and build a relationship with them. It's important anyways. If you're successful, that's going to be very important for you regardless. And it's important to have a co-founder. The reason for that is from the investment standpoint, like things happen all the time. It's just, that's the world. Like things happen. It's tough. Life's always moving. Things are always changing. And because of that, if you only have one co-founder, it can actually be rather risky. There's many public stories where there's like one co-founder that's always publicly, there's all kinds of stories in the news about one person that you associate all success of a company to. But that's normally not at all what most companies are like. And those companies, are questionably like that as well. Most of them requires a whole group of people, a bunch of people behind the scenes to make a company work out. So it's really important for you to have a good partner to do this with, as well as a good network. Where are you going to be recruiting from, right? These questions are going to come up while you're trying to build a company. So it's good when you're applying to Y Combinator or other good startup accelerators to already have that kind of covered out. This is just, I'll give I'm giving a range of advice because the challenge with advice is you really it changes rapidly, as a company scales or where you're at. So this is the initial advice is for people that are trying to get into startups.
Yeah.
Boy, is it really, nowadays are so interesting I know right now is a time where you don't have to be a 10x engineer to do a startup. It used to be that was the thing, find a 10x engineer and then have a good business idea. The idea is that AI has changed that, and you can actually build a product a lot quicker now, even with just being a 1x engineer with a good idea. I still see that strong engineers make better companies. So my personal position is that you should find a strong engineering partner. But that's, I could talk more about it. I'll leave that aside. So find a good, strong engineering partner, and then go to a company with them. I would say most funding is around AI nowadays, 80%. 80% is around AI, and then the rest, the 20% is around literal curing cancer drugs. It's basically you're either curing cancer or you're doing something in AI. Maybe there's some problems in between, especially if you personally have experience in it. So that's the next most important point is you should have personal experience in whatever problem you're solving. You shouldn't just try to solve general problems. That's not going to be fun for you. You're probably not going to be successful at it. You should probably have something you care deeply about that you've experienced. And that's always where you should try to start a company around. It comes off stronger when you're pitching, comes off stronger when you're building the product. It comes off stronger when you're working way too many hours and you're tired and you still got to work on it. It's nice to have something you really care about. So that's a little bit of my advice for if you haven't yet applied.
Yeah, great input. I mean, and like you said, you'll have plenty of advice, but it's always the best advice that stays top of mind. So whatever you said is super applicable. And even though you didn't answer the question on engineering, that's where I was going to next, right? I mean, because you have that sort of really good mix of, being a CTO, Ralph, you've been a product leader as well, and you've been an engineering leader. One of the things I've seen in a lot of these startups, I mean, all of them gets kind of muddied, right? Each of their roles, I mean, kind of gets mixed up. People don't know whether they're doing product management versus engineering, and what suffers, the output eventually suffers, right? I mean, you've kind of been through or worn all of these different hats. I mean, what is your point of view on where do you draw the line? When do you need to bring in, say, somebody from engineering to start with, and when do you need a chief product officer? What are your thoughts on that in general?
Well, one thing to notice is that my thoughts on this is still evolving. So even after a decade at plangrid and 3 years at TigerEye, it's still like I'm learning daily as it comes to this topic on how to be aware. The most important thing is to try to be aware of the different hats you're wearing so that you can better compartmentalize and understand the job you're trying to do. Like I'm doing a much different job when I'm product leader than when I'm engineering manager, than when I'm CTO. They're actually like very independent jobs I do. But normally at most startups, we don't have the luxury of hiring a bunch of people. So you end up doing a lot of this. Yeah, you're wearing all these hats at once.
Yeah.
I bet this is natural for pretty much everybody, that you have to wear one of the hats more often depending on the day or the month, right? You just got to pay attention. Where am I weak this month, this day? What do I need to do today? And I'll give you a few. I've got a rubric here. I've been working on this for a bit, so I got a rubric here on how to handle this. Products, I'll do product first. I've learned this again over and over again. If you're pre-product market fit, don't hire product managers. That's just like, I should have learned this already. I've tried it a few times. I've hired some really smart people that are very talented, and I loved working with them. I just don't think it's very satisfying for them. I don't think it's very satisfying for the company. Founders have got to own product, and in a strong way, like with the capital O for own, until you hit product market fit. You've got to be in the customer conversations. You have to bring it close to your chest. You can't let it drift off. And if you try to hire product too early, they're just not going to be happy, even if you hire the best person possible. So that's one of my lessons, is to wait till you've got product market fit to hire product. And then, okay, how do you know what job you're doing when you're doing product? I got this from a leader in the past when I was personally having trouble figuring out what the hell product meant. It's prioritization. Like that's the number one thing product does. Like that's the simplest thing you could boil it down to, is prioritization. And the reason that's so important is because product doesn't actually say what's right and wrong. That's like a weird thing. Product says what should go ahead of the other things. And of course, what often becomes part of product's job as well is, what the heck are we talking about? What do we call this concept? What are a few of this, what are called user stories, or the solutions that this product solves, right?
Yeah.
If we were to talk about this product when it launches, how do we talk about this thing? So product kind of organizes the order of those things based upon, and this is very strongly, I believe in this, a Cartesian coordinate system. Very simple, 2 vectors. How hard is this to build? How valuable will it be for my customers? And then my best trick to early product managers and early founders that are dealing with engineering challenges is you take that Cartesian coordinate system. How much value is this going to bring to our company, and how hard is this to build? You plot your features on it. And I guarantee when you're having challenges, you'll start notice that your engineers, they won't be estimating how hard it is. They'll be like guessing about how good this will be for the market. And then for some reason, your co-founder that's like a business person is guessing how hard it is to build. Like they're both not doing their jobs. Like the engineer needs to estimate, the co-founder needs to say how important it is. And your job in product is to try to bring those together and find the optimum way, the low-hanging fruit to like move the company forward.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to look it up myself. I mean, I was thinking it doesn't have to be necessarily for product managers, just for prioritization in general, right? I mean, that model is going to be super useful. So, and well said, Ralph. I mean, a light bulb went off in my head about how important prioritization is, right? And of course, you're speaking to the market, you're speaking to the customer to understand what is more important for them, to actually help with that prioritization, which is the flip side to it. And then you go build it, right? I mean, that's why I think your point on product market fit is also super important as to how it overlaps, right?
Totally. Right. I'm glad. Thank you for that feedback. I'll give you two more to finish your question. I'll give you engineering management and CTO. Engineering management is when you are trying to hire, fire, and manage your team. So it's bringing in the talent. It's sometimes helping the talent out. It's figuring out what projects they're doing next. It's figuring out what projects they want to do, figuring out what they're confused about, what they're inspired about, where their blockers are, what the names of their kids are, what they do in their free time, what they want to be in their career, right? Where they want to go and how to help them get there. It's tricky to run both product hat and management hat because you've really got to, you can't be bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. Where's my feature? Where's my this? How do I build this? You do have to actually add a little space to understand the person and make sure that you're not going to have someone just quit out of nowhere, because that's going to impact your product development too. If you don't realize that somebody doesn't really like their job, or you might not realize that somebody's been looking for a while to find a new job, and you just had assumed that you thought they were happy because you were spending too much time having fun working with them, right? To not really get at the core issue of, are they feeling satisfied with their career? Or is this company pointing them where they want to go? So engineering management's I think, now this gets a little bit more controversial, but also it tends to be, you can be a player coach in engineering management. You can still code a bit. You can still be an architect. Those, especially for early stage, those jobs sometimes split up later on. Coding, you got to be careful on. You got to code the stuff no one wants to do, the CI/CD, the tools, the kind of ugly stuff. You can't do the cool stuff. And you can only code if you're an engineering manager, if you've got the time. You can't block your team. You can't write bad code because it's embarrassing, right? You're just going to embarrass yourself. But you do have an opportunity to still be a player coach as an engine manager. It's a very special job. I love it. And then finally, my last job, I'll tell you about, the CTO job. This one's the most weird, so it's the funnest to talk about. CTOs do any portion of everything I just said. So product and engineering management, all the things I've said, CTOs could easily have that in their purview. They're either going to be direct management, which is what I am, so I manage the entire team and all the functions, or they're going to be more of a leadership capacity, where they might not manage anyone directly, but they might still plan for the future. When I'm talking to you right now and getting to, share with your audience and hopefully learn more about what makes technology so exciting now, and, just have a good conversation, I'm really wearing my CTO hat, because as a product leader, I don't need to be here. I should be off talking to the customer. As an engineering manager, I shouldn't be here. I should be off helping my team, talking to them. But as CTO, I should be understanding what's happening out there in the general world. I should be sharing stories and experiences of my own company. I should be talking to other thought leaders about what kind of, what they're seeing in the market, how they're thinking of technology. Getting to learn more about the Flutter ecosystem. This is open source projects, like I mentioned earlier. This is really up the alley of CTO. It's what makes it special. As companies scale, this changes, right? CTOs become a different thing. Some CTOs just recruit. They're only focused on engineering recruiting because that's the need of the company's scaling at such speed. That's the challenge. Some CTOs have a small team that only works on new product development. They do a lot of different jobs, but mostly they should be there to kind of be more of the general high-level view of the architecture, where it's going, understand if there's a news article about AI, how to relate that to the business, tell your CEO about it. And that's kind of those bullet points between product being prioritization, engineering management being kind of how to grow a team, manage a team, keep a team successful, and the CTO being kind of the high level, making sure that we're one step ahead of the competition, understanding where the market is and getting the message out there for our company, and understanding what the message is from others. That's how I break it up, the three jobs.
Yeah, very, very enlightening, Ralph. I mean, your point of view is, again, I'm just thinking as you're speaking, and a lot of what I'm thinking is, it also depends on which stage you are in as well. Right. If you're day one to say first 12 months, some of the components change. If you're a little more mature, your priorities change, and then the roles or the proportion of what you do with the three components that you mentioned change as well. So you got to be wary of it. But at the end of the day, I also think, you do what you're good at. It also depends on the person. If it's Ralph, you do it this way. If it's somebody else, they might prefer doing it as another way. But super good overarching principle. So thank you for that. Anything else you would like to tell the audience, Ralph, about TigerEye? Any help you want from the community to, take a look at your AI analysts? I mean, can they play around with it? I mean, anything else that you would like the community to do?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So we don't have anything that the community can publicly play around with, but one thing we do have is we do have a demo. And it's pretty cool. So I would say, most products can't be demoed right now. With TigerEye, part of the TigerEye's core technology is a simulator that helps you forecast the future, kind of build out future scenarios. We can use that simulator to build synthetic data, which means that, if you're working at a company or you have a data team in particular, I think some folks, might be on the data side. We can basically help you all with pretty much the full ETL stack, which for mid-market companies could be a real headache saver. So everywhere from the cold storage to the ETL to forming the data model, all the way up to answering the AI questions. That's really where we see TigerEye now. And anyone that's in that kind of space, in that market, I'd love to see, reaching out to me, scheduling a demo, checking out our software, kind of playing around with it, seeing if it meets their needs. For the community that doesn't have that type of role, though, for the people that aren't in finance, another thing to note is we are really pushing hard on finance now. This isn't on the website, but I would say to your audience, if anyone's in the finance space as well or does a finance-like job, that's a place we're really interested in right now. We're just finishing our NetSuite integrations, some really cool stuff. Outside of that, though, I think on the open source side, this is really exciting stuff for me. If you are on a project that needs a local database like DuckDB, I'd definitely love for you all to check out our DuckDB.Dart bindings, see if you like them, give them a try, open some issues on the board. We're under active development there. I would say one thing I could use a temperature check for, so this one's a unique one, but hey, I'll throw it out to the development community. We ended up developing a pretty robust graphing capability inside of TigerEye as well. We didn't mean to because there was FLChart, which is like a pretty reasonable library for charting, but FLChart has like weird not weird, but it has limitations that the author is not going to fix anytime soon, and we couldn't wait for. Like, for instance, we needed like a funnel where you could turn a bar chart on its side, and FLChart just didn't support that. So, also our charting library, it supports millions of data points. We had some speed issues, and some customers we have millions of data points. We're not sure if we want to open source it yet, but I'm just throwing it out there. If anyone's interested in an open source Flutter graphing library and has an interest there, the more data I get, the more likely we'll be to open source it and support it. So I just wanted to throw that out there to your audience.
Super. So, I mean, our audience includes all sorts of people. So we'll be sure to give a shout out to the Flutter audience to see if somebody wants to knock at your door. And I'll be sure to publish all the contact information, Ralph.
Thank you very much, Anthony. It was really nice getting to know you better. I didn't know you were an AE, for instance. That was really fun to learn, and really fun chatting with you today. Likewise.
Thanks so much for coming. I wish you and the team the very best with TigerEye.
Thank you. Same to you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.